Roxo Media House.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Purple Theory podcast presented by FrogsToday. My name is Grant McGalliard. I have alongside with me my co-host, my friend Parker Fleming. Parker, spread the good news, my guy. TCU is 12-0 and has finished the regular season undefeated.
Many people, Grant, are talking about the fact that TCU has done something that literally no other team in the new Big 12 has ever done, which is finished the regular season undefeated 12-0. Grant, this is not a fluke. Hey, someone had to be the second best team in the Big 12 and this team got some bounces. This is a TCU team who has, run the gamut in conference play. Oklahoma is the only other team who has done that. And they put a huge cherry on top of that season by absolutely trouncing the Iowa State Cyclones this weekend in a game where motivation levels may have been disparate, but very clearly the Cyclones were outclassed.
We will get to that in a minute. First, I apologize. I was very rude. I did not ask you, how are you? How was your Thanksgiving? Everything okay on your end?
Yeah, it was great. Did a little traveling. Listeners may hear that my nose and my chest cavities were reminded that I'm allergic to everything in the Southeast as I spent a week in Memphis. And so I'm still dealing with the fallout from that, but nobody died. We had enough food. We had a good holiday. So it was fun to see my folks after being in redacted mountain towns for so long. And yeah, it was really nice.
Parker is back in Siberia where the air is clean and cold and free of all allergens. So I'm happy for you. That's good.
Yeah. What about you? How was Thanksgiving down in the Dirty Bay?
Thanksgiving was great. Got to see my relatives. My little cousin, we just found out she and her husband are having a baby, so very excited. Yeah, everything's awesome, man. It was fun. It's amazing. What's that old Twitter joke you hear? I think someone tweeted it half in sincerity, but I'm hearing at coffee shops people whispering about the undefeated TCU Horned Frogs. All of my relatives separately were like, "Yo, that TCU Baylor game was insane. Like, how excited are you for Ohio State? Like, TCU's undefeated." And so it was very fun to kind of get to talk to them about that and just see a bunch of people. My green bean casserole, gotta say, talk of the town. Spent about 2.5 hours on it Wednesday night. Rave reviews. So yes, Thanksgiving was very good.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. And yes, I got a lot of family comments about TCU and questions about the playoff and everything, which was a lot of fun. So I'm glad that we were. It's nice to have TCU good again. Grant, I remember, we'll get into the game here in a second. I remember my freshman year, I went off to college, and that was before TCU was on a national scale in any way, shape, or form. And I'm from Memphis originally. And the first time I kind of came home and was talking to people, a lot of people who kind of tangentially knew me, like, my parents' friends at church and stuff, thought I had gone to the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. So they had the three letters correct, the T and the C and the U, but they did not have the meaning or the arrangement. So it's always nice that, TCU got on the map as football, and people never really asked me that again after my freshman year because they knew who TCU was after that football season. And it's nice to have TCU back in some national spotlights again.
You were a freshman in what, like 1993? Is that right?
1893.
18. Actually. Okay, my bad. I forget. Yeah.
It was like, dude, yeah, it was very, very tumultuous time being a college freshman during the Reconstruction.
During the Spanish-American War, it really took a lot out of you.
In Texas, let me tell you, the roving bands of scalpers really put a damper on my college fraternity party scene freshman year.
You had to watch.
If you want to know what it was like for me to go to college in TCU in 1883.
I like that you just moved it back a decade from what you just said, which was 1893.
You should read Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry, basically word for word how my college experience was.
Jesus Christ. Parker, TCU beat Iowa State, and I want to make sure I get this score right. So that's like 62-14 on Saturday night at Amon G. Carter Stadium. It was, and if I may sum this game up in 3 words, the only summary I can give is beat that ass for 4 straight quarters.
It was truly a wampin'. in every sense of the word. A whomping, a whooping, a takedown, a smackdown. Very, very impressive. This is the worst loss for Iowa State in terms of total points and margin since TCU beat them 55-3 in 2014. It was, I think, only the fourth time since the beginning of the 2018 season that Matt Campbell team had given up 40 points, let alone 62. TCU this season, Matt Campbell's Iowa State allowed one team to score more than 30 points. TCU did that in the first half. TCU matched Iowa State's season total points allowed in the first half. Now, granted, one of those was a defensive score, so we could quibble about that. But even if you take the defensive scores out, TCU did something that no one else had done against Iowa State all season.
Can I take a really quick pot shot before we get to the actual like numbers and breakdowns and everything?
I love a good segue pot shot. That's great.
Iowa State's special teams. Parker, I don't know if you know this. Iowa State does not have a special teams coordinator. They missed 2 field goals, gave up a 62-yard kick return, and also snapped the ball so far over the punter's head that it hit a referee. I want to make sure we got that on the record before we moved on to everything else. It was, in a way, a microcosm of how that whole game went.
Grant, all I have to say about Matt Campbell and special teams is I am out of carrots. I am out of sticks. Mr. Scott has time and again proven himself to be an unmanageable employee and a poor branch manager. I recommend he be removed from that position and reassigned to sales where he belongs.
And by reassigned to sales, you mean take the Cincinnati job. Nice.
Oh my gosh. Really what it's funny about it, because I don't want to talk about special teams for too long.
I know, I just want to make fun of it briefly.
It's so funny for 2 reasons. One, because Matt Campbell has used the word success to describe his special teams unit this season. Like, this wasn't like a quote from 6 years ago. It was this year. He was talking about the success on that in that phase of the game. And because they don't have a special teams coach, because Matt Campbell has literally said it's a waste of time to have one guy there. So that's really funny, especially for a team that has gotten a reputation for winning on the margin, which really just means they didn't lose anyone to COVID in 2020. And so they won some close games. They're the team that, quote unquote, loses or wins on the margin that has just for the last 2 seasons done nothing but shot themselves in the foot and inflicted wounds. And we saw some more of that this week as well.
Yeah.
Let's stay on special teams for a second. Okay. Gunnar Henderson returning punts. Okay, dude.
Sure.
I see you. I'm about it. He is a squirrely little dude, and I was a little nervous about it. There's some chaotic energy. Like the first one he caught, like, man, I don't know about this, but he's got really good field vision, very, very shifty, is potentially very fun as a punt returner.
I'm 100% in on that. And since let's wrap up special teams, which is not something I thought we would say. Let me make sure I get this right. 10 minutes.
My notebook has 10 minutes on special teams right at the top. So
well, Griffin Kell continues to be an absolute dog. 54-yard field goal. Guy has stones. He is awesome.
Okay, I had a theory, not a theory, just a thought about why they kicked that. Mm-hmm. It's really nice to know what your game max is. It's really nice to know, what does Griffin Kell feel comfortable attempting? I kind of thought, like, what did Griffin Kell bet Sonny to let him go out there and kick that 54-yard field goal? But in reality, like, that's just really nice to know what you can do. I think the last 2 weeks with TCU special teams, they have done some stuff intentionally to make sure they are prepared for any and all obstacles in that phase of the game, just knowing that there are bigger things than just winning games here against bad teams down the stretch.
Can I tell you something that's BS? I don't think Griffin Kell, let me make sure I get this right. Griffin Kell is not on the Lou Groza Award watch list. Lou Groza Award voters, you are missing out on a really talented kid.
If I've said it once, I've said it a million times, Grant. The Lou Groza Award is a sham. It is a popularity contest that is only designed to reward those teams that flood the voters with merchandise and advertising campaigns. And you know what? It's disappointing.
It's filled with teams that kick bad field goals. TCU only kicks good field goals. Please do not go back and listen to any podcast we've done previously this year in which we have said that they have kicked a bad field goal. They only kick good ones, and Griffin Kell makes them. Parker, give me your numbers, man. What happened in this game?
What about the numbers? Well, Iowa State's offense just did a terrible job. They had averaged negative 0.21 EPA per play. TCU's offense averaged more than a quarter point a play in EPA. So on average, every snap, we're looking at about a half a point of differential there, which is just extremely impressive.
Yes.
What's funny about this is that I think this is a good example about how EPA per play and yards per play might give us conflicting signals, because Iowa State 6.13 yards per play, but TCU 6.01. If you account for down distance, yard line, and game state, you understand why TCU might have been, packing it in, slowing it up a little bit. Iowa State 0.18 EPA per rush. They were kind of effective moving the ball on the ground. They got some big runs from a couple running backs we'll talk about. But they were negative 0.5, a half point in negative value every time they attempted a pass. Absolutely erratic there. TCU 0.68 points, points added per drop back, and negative 0.05 per rush. But I haven't done all of my data cleaning. That's going to involve some garbage time. It's going to be a little bit better than that. So just, an absolutely one-sided affair here. Very efficient TCU performance, very, very inefficient Iowa State performance. I think there's a lot more nuance that we can talk about and kind of nitpick about this game, even though it was like a 55 to something blowout, 62 to whatever blowout. But overall, TCU showed up and threw some haymakers early, and it was over. As soon as TCU got that pick six, I think this game was well out of reach.
Yeah. Can we talk defense first? Because there's a stat, and really two stats, that I want to highlight from this game. Parker, we talked on Wednesday about how I wouldn't say devastating of a combo, but devastating Xavier Hutchinson is for Iowa State, and how effective Jalen Noel can be behind him in the passing game. Xavier Hutchinson had 2 catches for 11 yards in this game. Jalen Noel had 7 catches for 40 yards. That's 5.7 yards per catch. His longest was 10 yards. They shut down Iowa State's 2 best offensive players, period, point blank.
They absolutely did. And there was really not a lot that Iowa State could do offensively outside of that. I do think it's very funny that there were 2 Tre'Vius Hodges-Tomlinson pass interferences that got booed very loudly, that were like very obvious Tre'Vius Hodges-Tomlinson pass interference calls there. But I'm very okay with him saying, I don't need to, I'm not going to give up big play, like whatever, you can have this. I'm not going to give up that big play. Was really impressed with just kind of the depth and breadth of who played and who was effective in coverage overall. We saw some names that we hadn't necessarily seen. Deshaun McCoon, Obiazor got a lot of good reps in there. I was happy to see Mark Perry in some productive pass coverage. I think that's an aspect of his game that hasn't been great. There was, I think, 2 where he was lined up against Xavier Hutchinson that didn't go great, but he should not be covering a number 1 receiver. So that's totally fine. Generally very, very effective there in kind of bottling up those. That's Iowa State says, we're going to get the ball to Xavier Hutchinson. We're going to force it to him. And TCU just denied that. So that was pretty cool to see on the offensive side of defensive side of things.
Yeah. By the way, Shad Banks snap count 44. Want to make sure we get that on the record. Josh, we had to shout out Josh Newton and Miller Bradford, who had the 2 pick sixes. Newton was targeted 8 times. He gave up 2 receptions for a total of 13 yards. Total stud performance from him. THT, even with those pass interference calls, targeted 7 times, only gave up 2 receptions. TCU had Hunter Deckers in jail in this game. He had nowhere to throw, and when he did make those throws, he was flushed out of the pocket and threw it way behind the receiver, which led to the Josh Newton pick 6. It was a hell of a performance from this defense. That
Millard Bradford pick 6 was one of the rudest plays I've ever seen. Shout out to Jamie, asked him about it. Jamie Plunkett of FrogsToday, for those of you who don't know, asked him about it after the game, and he was like, yeah, they ran that play on the first drive. Like, we very much knew what was happening there. So, and it's funny because it's that PA boot. I feel like that's something to do in like the dead of winter, is go back and we just divvy up teams and be like, how often did they run this PA boot? Because everyone runs it to the tight end or whatever. And they tried to run it. And Iowa State's best game plan early was like, get the ball out of Hunter Decker's hands. And that turned to be unsustainable. They had a couple decent plays, but I mean, 4.4 yards per attempt, 50% completion on 24 attempts for Deckers. He had a 10 average depth of target, but only a 56.5 adjusted completion percentage. And really what I think is interesting was he wasn't crazily pressured. I think TCU was content to sit back like once or twice. I realistically, having rewatched the first half of this game this morning, or this afternoon rather, TCU brought pressure on the first drive and then just didn't again. They just let Hodge and Hodges hit him, and then they just sat back. And I think that was very effective. I think that's a very smart thing to do against an inexperienced quarterback who is definitely over his depth. I will say that Hunter Deckers did get hurt in this game. The game was well out of hand. Also, he got hurt because Grant, his right guard, decided that he was going to body slam Dom Williams on top of him, which cannot feel good. Just to go lineman Dom Williams, you ground, just has to feel bad. Overall, also, I will say once again that a lot of college, a lot of Big 12 specifically, coaches have really resorted to running quarterbacks who should not be running this much and just kind of hurting their bodies. Like Hunter Decker's between the tackles multiple times in a game. I know your offense is hurting, dude, but like, are you trying to kill the kid?
Yeah, it's not great. Two things. One, Rocco Beck, who that second pick, I was wrong about that. It was not Hunter Deckers. The other thing, okay, you mentioned Dom Williams, and I thought it was Dom because it was another big body. But did you see who recovered that fumble that Keon Stewart forced?
The fumble that Keon Stewart recovered.
I know there's a lot of turnovers and crap that happened.
Was
in this
it
game.
not Caleb Fox? Surely we can confirm this with.
I can confirm it, and that's why it's Tymon Mitchell. Sprinted all the way from nose tackle to the first down line and dove on the ball.
Love it. Tymon Mitchell, who
also
recovered the JT Daniels fumble.
That's correct, I believe. Yeah.
Just
people were moving on the TCU defense. There were 5 people surrounding the Iowa State receiver when he fumbled that ball, and Tymon dove in among all of them and got it. I wanted to give him a shout out for that because it was a hell of a play.
Awesome. Yeah, love that. Love that they're getting these guys in. Grant, if we just go to the defensive line, Dom Williams only played 38 snaps. Dylan Horton only 34. Terrell Cooper only 33. There were 72 total defensive snaps for TCU. So what's great about that is that Tymon Mitchell got 28 snaps. Caleb Box got 28 snaps. George Ellis got 26 snaps. Wall Ugak
23. We've tried this several times, and I don't know the answer, but yeah.
For a team whose one of my primary concerns is depth at defensive line, that's 6 or 7 guys getting in there and playing a bunch. I am very about that. I think that's really, really great.
I mean, that's just getting reps. I mean, against a team that is not a very good team, but in a game that means a lot because you have to win it because the playoff is stupid. Being able to get those guys 28, 26 snaps is really meaningful for their development and probably builds a little bit of confidence moving forward in case, one of those guys gets tired, Williams or Horton or whoever. So yes, I was very happy to see that as well.
Given that TCU has now played 11, will have played 11 straight games after going into this week. Just give some guys some opportunity to take it easy and rest up a little bit and not be as physically hurt. So really, really great there. A couple things I loved on the defensive side without, reading grades or whatever. I think Johnny Hodges and Jamoy Hodge were really able to pin their ears back and say, let's find a singular role. And that was really great to see them overall playing well. I think in pass coverage, they did a couple interesting things I noticed and just kind of drew this one out on the first drive for Iowa State. They ran a play that was basically kind of that Lincoln Riley, your receiver comes across, but he stays behind the line of scrimmage and they try to dump it off to him. And Hodges and Hodge passed, they were playing zone, both passed the defender off. And it looks like the defender is wide open, but they funnel him. And then THT moves off of his man and makes the tackle after he makes the catch. Like just a beautiful kind of like, almost like a basketball play of like, all right, I'm here until the end of my zone. And I'm going back. I'm here to this thing. And it was just such a nice so many times I feel like they look like they're not 100% sure what they were doing. A couple times in this game, which you would expect against a bad offense, it felt like those two particularly were pretty confident in the pass game. They did have some mistakes,
Sure.
but a lot of that is when you can get Jalen Noel or Xavier Hutchinson on one of those guys, you're going to try and do it. So I can't blame them too much for those mismatches, but I did thought they had moments where they really had clicked and were just kind of confident in feeling themselves, which is really, I think that's just really neat.
You know what else is neat? TCU emptied the daggum bench. Like we talked about that second level of guys at defensive line that came in and spelled Williams and Horton and Cooper. But you look at linebacker, like Matthew Kerr played a snap. Luke Lingard played 4 snaps. Ryan Quintanar played 2. Chase Biddle played 6 snaps at strong safety. I mean, this was let's get the boys out there and play, especially at the end when it became garbage time. And that's good. Like TCU is a good enough team that they should be able to do that. And Dykes is a good enough coach to realize let's get the boys out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just very nice. It's very nice.
I will say 2 things that I'm worried about. One, Noah Daniels had 16 snaps. That's funny. A couple of things I am worried about. Johnny Hodges did go to the locker room. I'm almost positive that was preventative because I haven't heard anything else about that. And it was like with 1 minute, like 2 minutes left on the clock in the first half. And there was like, just go inside, dude. It's fine. Abe Kamara also went out. I don't know anything about that.
Snaps.
That one worries me. He went to the locker room pretty early in the first half. So again, hopefully TCU was able to treat this as a functional bye and be like, hey man, if your hamstring or whatever is nagging you, don't worry about it. Go in the cryo chamber and don't sit out here and die while we're going to win this game very obviously. So those are 2 things that like those guys being 100% would be very good for TCU's
for Kansas State. Yeah. Speaking of functional absences, Parker, can we transfer over to the offense? Let's see if anything else about the defense.
Only if you want to talk about the functional absence of Sam Jackson pass attempts in a blowout.
Buddy, it makes me sad. QJ did not play today. I'm fine with that. TCU did not need him. Parker, here is my favorite stat, and PFF is lacking on data, so I'm not sure I'm right, but I'm about 95% sure I'm right. All 4 of TCU's touchdown passes were between the hash marks. I'm almost positive that that's true.
That would not surprise me
because Max's 3 were the pop pass to Spivey, which we will talk about because it ruled. That dart to Savion Williams at the back of the end zone, and then Jordan Hudson at the back of the end zone. And Chandler Morris is also to Hudson.
PFF says that Max Duggan had 1 touchdown.
Which is incorrect. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The data hasn't been updated yet.
Extremely loud, incorrect buzzer. That's Grant's favorite Twitter joke.
Thank you for that. That makes me very happy.
With that in mind, I don't know that we necessarily need to parse out the nuances of the data here because I do not believe it's correct.
Yeah.
In real time, I had looked at some of this, but I will say Max threw some lasers.
Yes.
I mean, absolute spiral tight through the window, some incredible balls. He had a couple misses. He missed Davis in the back of the end zone, should have been touchdown. But again, that's a ball where it's like, hey, you got to overthrow that or you don't at all. They stopped on the broadcast. Forget who it was now. The touch, there was a play to Spivey before they scored a touchdown. I think it was before the Hudson touchdown. Mm-hmm. And Spivey is in the middle and just running a little seam route. And there are 2 guys on Spivey, and you know he's going to get open. Max Duggan throws him open in a window of maybe 2 by 2 feet.
Yes.
Just absolutely incredible. Very, very great performance there. And Max did not, run and hurt his body. Didn't have to sacrifice his body for this game. Got his numbers overall to try and
get to New York,
beef up some stats a little bit. And if you want to talk about the New York thing, I think that he's done enough to probably solidify a spot there, which is very fun. I think good performances by good college players should be rewarded, even if they're not, NFL bona fide number 1 picks. And so that's pretty good. So I have just in the caveman stats, which I trust a little bit more. Max Duggan with a 93.2 QBR, 212 yards, 3 touchdowns. That total yards is always confusing because like TCU had a ton of drives where they just started super short and didn't really have to do much. Overall. So nice overall. TCU's long was 37 yards in the passing game. A bunch of guys. Go ahead.
I think that was a throw to Savion on the right side.
It was. Yep. And let me say this, and then we should just spend a minute on Savion because,
okay, please.
My God. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 TCU receivers had a long pass of at least 15 yards, and 3 more had one of at least 12 yards. So 9 guys with at least 12 yards on a pass there. Pretty dang incredible by TCU in terms of spreading the ball around, in terms of stepping up without Quentin Johnston, Grant, and maybe, just maybe, because we're talking about that this week, maybe, just maybe, making Kansas State think about some of these secondary and tertiary options on this offense.
If I'm Kansas State and I'm watching this game, let's talk about it now. Savion Williams is he's officially a threat at this point.
Yep, absolutely.
Officially. I mean, that catch that I referenced earlier, that 37-yarder or whatever it was, maybe OPI, who knows? But falling, twisting away from his defender, catch it, secure it, make sure it doesn't hit the ground. Those are catches we did not know Savion Williams could make. We knew he was big and athletic, and we knew he could get open over the middle of the field. But those are the types of catches where he becomes a legitimate secondary option to Quentin Johnston. Also not playing in this game, as far as I can tell, is Tay Barber. And yet Savion Williams just stood up and said, hey, guess what? I'm going to be a number 1 receiver. And he 100%
was a little bit concerned about that just from the standpoint of like Tay Barber did senior day and stuff. And you figured he would play a little bit, but is clearly battling something.
Let's hope it's
hopefully he's just
preventative measure. Yeah. But
I will say a couple things about Savion as well, just to build on what you said there and to think about that a little bit more. A couple things that I really liked about that. One, they ran the Quentin Johnston play to Savion with great success, I think 3 times. And that's the play where you just get the ball to him with his back to the defense and let him make a move. I think those game reps are invaluable. I think he is very poised to be a number 1 guy next year, and looks to have calmed down a little bit. And so I like that he did 2 things. One, he filled the Quentin Johnston role just in terms of we're going to run these plays through you, which was nice. 2, he did that with a lot of the attention on him because he really was the number 1 guy and very obvious. So was really happy with that. Both, I know it's crazy to think about 2023 right now, but from a 2023 perspective, I was very happy with that. And from hey, we got to play at least 2 more games against really good teams. It's nice to have an option that is out there. The other thing I thought about, the tight ends combined for 7 targets. And as we talk about tight ends, Grant, I think we should talk right now about the first drive just overall and 2 of the greatest plays that I think TCU has ever run. Grant, I want to take this first drive out to dinner. I want to sit over Italian food, candle lit, and just make googly eyes at each other all night. This drive was unequivocally the best offensive drive in TCU history.
I'm singing Towns Van Zant's "If I Needed You." I'm looking it square in the eyes. I would swim the seas to ease this drive's pain. It was amazing. Yeah. Parker, I know what the second play is. It's the obvious one, but what's the first one that you're
okay? The first one is that TCU ran mesh rail to Trent Battle with just amazing precision and amazing efficacy. They ran 2x2 on each side. And then 2 running backs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, 2x1 and 2 running backs. 2 inside guys go. It's Blair Conrad over there. And one, do you see them literally reach their hand out to slap hands, which just warms my little air raid heart. Deep at the cockles of my heart, I am warmed. And then the outside receiver runs a post just to take somebody off the top. He's never getting the ball. Kendre Miller goes into a little bit of motion and then just kind of runs a flare, a little swing out. And Trent Battle runs the rail, runs the wheel, and Iowa State's defense just cascades towards the mesh. Trent Battle is wide open. I think he's super valuable as a pass catcher. And it was just a very efficient, like TCU can do the basics of a functioning offense. It is beautiful. Yeah.
One
I'll
note about
figure
Trent
out how to
Battle.
tweet a video of it because YouTube TV is being a jerk right now. And so I don't know how to record it, but I will find it. No worries.
One note about Trent Battle real quick, and then we'll get to the second play on that drive that we need to talk about. Battle laid a dude out on Kendre Miller's longer touchdown run. Was the lead blocker and decimated an Ohio State defender. So credit to him because that was awesome. The second play on that drive, and Parker, you stop me when I get something wrong here, but this was the touchdown on 4th and 2. TCU lines up in what players of Madden 02 would call a pro set, but a running back on either side of Max Duggan.
It was technically 22, which is not something we've seen from TCU a ton. 2 tight ends, 2 running backs.
Yes. Duggan fakes to give. TCU, the offensive line sells it so well, and that I think the entire right side pulls and goes left, which we have been worried about in the past, especially against Texas, when they didn't have the ability to pull because they were getting swamped, and Duggan didn't have time to sit around in the pocket and wait for that. Spivey does this amazing cut back towards the middle, kind of act like he's going to kick out block against the linebacker and just cut straight upfield. The wide receiver on the right, I think, runs a little bit of an end, just kind of half-heartedly to draw that safety on the right side. And Spivey cuts straight up the middle. Duggan hits him wide open. Perfectly executed. It was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it was just one that TCU went for it on 4th down. They were aggressive in a way that they knew they'd be confident. One funny thing about that, I think, is that Kendre Miller wasn't maybe 100% sure what he was supposed to be doing. If you go back and watch that play, he dances a little bit. He just kind of stands there and puts his hands out. It's like maybe he's looking for a guy, but it was kind of a busted play. But because Spivey sold it so well, and they were so worried about the threat of the run there, just awesome. Grant, I feel like one of my first articles in 2019 at Frogs of War was like, here's 5 steps to fix the option or fix the offense. And step number 1 was get the tight ends involved, tight end pop pass, just run it over and over again. It's so nice to just see, hey, the things that modern offenses do, you can run these successfully if you want to. And so love the aggressiveness. Love that drive was wonderful. One other play I noticed on that drive, we're deep in the weeds here, and that's totally fine. I did notice that I don't know the technical term for this, but listeners at home, mesh is of course the 2 guys running across the middle, and you run some concepts around that. TCU did run what I'm calling a mesh pivot, where 2 guys break in and then they kind of curly Q out and run it out. And so just, again, we're doing the air raid basics. We're layering on top of the basic concepts, executing them super well. And I mean, we ran like a jet sweep wide zone from under center.
Yeah. That was interesting.
There was a lot of stuff that TCU did just to say, hey, we can do this, which again is good for, we'll talk on Wednesday, is good for putting stuff on film for Kansas State, but is also just we can do what it takes to win against a very good defense.
Yes.
Nothing was off limits in this game.
No, it was a total free-for-all. I almost used a term and I had to censor myself. Parker, because PFF is not
I don't even want to know. Don't tell me off air.
I'll text you. Because PFF, we're not trusting these stats. Kendre Miller had a fine game, only had to carry the ball 15 times. That's probably good. And he had 2 touchdowns. And Monty Bailey, 11 carries for 58 yards and stole my heart. Complete and absolute dog. Scientists are convening conventions to figure out how much dog is in this man. I'm not sure it's possible to determine. I want to give a shout out.
We'll have Kendre Miller next year, so this won't really be an issue. But a backfield of Imani Bailey and Trent Battle would be super annoying.
It'd be sick.
I don't know that it would be amazing, and it's awesome that TC is going to have both of them to do things with. But holy cow, those are 2 supremely annoying players to defend.
God, they just look miserable to go up against. I want to give a shout out to
body is. I cut you off on this shout out again. I'm sorry.
Fine.
Bailey's body control is astounding. As a larger gentleman who enjoys sports like powerlifting, not necessarily ballet, for instance, the things that Imani Bailey can do with a short burst are incredible to me.
Yeah, he's I think preternaturally gifted in terms, and the fact that he can do this and he's only a freshman is unbelievable. The amount of development that he's gonna have.
Yep.
Shout out to Player X. No penalties. I thought he had a great game on the right side. I really do.
Against freaking Will McDonald.
Yeah, man.
Brandon Coleman got cooked against Will McDonald.
Now on the other side, Brandon
but
Coleman
it
had a bad
happens
game.
to the best of us. But holy cow, Andrew Coker had a damn fine game.
A damn fine game up front. And for the most part, the line did against that Iowa State defense. Max was kept clean. Only kind of had to flush out a couple times. So I was very impressed with what happened.
If you were so
front.
inclined to rewatch this game and try to evaluate the offensive line, one, focus on where Will McDonald is and what he does every play, because TCU does some interesting stuff. They basically said, hey, I think we can take care of the rest of this as long as Steve and Brandon Coleman just go on Will McDonald. And they were really, I mean, it takes two men to block him. He's a freak, and TCU worked hard to do it. Two, on the run, it's so satisfying to watch like a counter, Grant, against the tight front, because you have 5-on-3. And what happens is the tackle, center, and tackle on TCU's offense engage those three guys, and the guards move, and you can almost see like the front and the shape move and then kind of bubble out and know where the run's going to go. It's just so satisfying against the tight front. And so that was really fun to watch. I think that TCU's offensive guards are getting a little better at navigating kind of that pulling in space thing. I know a couple times this season they've looked a little bit slow, and that's put TCU behind the chains.
They've fallen down, things of that nature. Yeah.
Yes. Yesterday against they false started out of timeouts, just all sorts of things. And yesterday against a very good defensive front, objectively, even before the blowout was in effect, they were moving, getting a push. They were moving well. They were getting around the line. I was very pleased.
A Riley offense with an actual offensive line coach is pretty daggone fun.
And this is not any of his guys. I guess it's Alana Lee. That's his only guy. But like TCU is going to build a development pipeline. Like that's very interesting. Very interesting to me.
It's very interesting. Parker, want to do a little whip around? That's not fun to you? All right.
I love that.
Starting in the Big 12, Texas 38, Baylor 27. This game was on Friday night, and I'll be honest with you, I did not watch it. But Baylor, 6-6. Not the Baylor team we thought we were going to get at the beginning of the year.
I'm trying to remember on the podcast. I think we talked about a ceiling of like 8 or 9 wins, like absolute best case scenario for them. I stand by that. They lost some 1-score games. They could have won this game against Texas. I believe they were up at halftime. Yeah, I watched this whole thing.
Yep.
And they recovered a fumble at the Texas 27. No, sorry, that was when the play was. And so they got their ball at the own 44 and had first and 10 at the Texas 23 and missed a field goal that I think really changed the game there. And then they got a fumble touchdown, which made it look a little closer as well. So some back and forth there in terms of who's really good. I think this game just kind of got away from Baylor. But the lesson of Baylor season is that what we said this offseason, like I think that absolutely holds up, whether our win total projection was close or not. Just saying, if you have a lot of good guys who are really involved in your team, I don't care if you have good recruits who are taking their place next year. Those guys have to develop. For 99% of programs, you're not replacing NFL guys with 5 stars. You're going to have a learning curve. And this season, Baylor had the learning curve, and they didn't get as many bounces as they did last year. Yeah.
I still think Dave Aranda is a fantastic coach. I would not be down on Baylor going into next year. They just had it down here. It's the bottom of their cycle.
I'm not reveling in Dave Aranda's lack of success this year. I am reveling in Baylor Twitter, who said some amazing things about Blake Shapen having a come to Jesus moment about Gary Bohannon this weekend. So, because I do think that quarterback play limited them. And the perverse thing about Baylor, this is not a whip around. This has turned into a monologue.
Sorry, we got to rephrase the perverse thing about Baylor because otherwise we'll be here all night. But please go ahead.
Well, because this season, the whole deal was, hey, we've got really good offensive and defensive lines, but we're returning a ton of skill players, or we have to replace a bunch of skill players around it. And it didn't go great. And next year they're losing like 9 linemen and returning all their skill players. It's just kind of like monkey's paw. Like, dang, I wish we could return skill players next year, and the monkey paw curls and all your offensive linemen are gone. So interesting to see. We'll have a lot to talk about that this offseason.
West Virginia 24, Oklahoma State 19. Neil Brown refuses to get fired. It's funny. I've said it. It's really, really funny.
Yeah.
He still might, but he's done his damnedest to not.
Neil Brown's kind of like, look, man, if they're going to take me back to Texas, they're not going to take me back alive. He is not turning himself in. He's going to make him gun him down. Oklahoma State truly had a what the hell guys season. Just an absolute deluge of injuries. I think I sprained my ankle watching a little bit of this game. And really just felt like they kind of gave up once they knew we were going to be down 9 starters for a lot of things. So
reading the quarterback stat line from this game, Garrett Green for West Virginia, 8 of 14 for 48 yards and 1 touchdown. Again, his team won. Garrett Rangel, Garrett versus Garrett, which is a very college football quarterback matchup, 18 of 42, 178 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. If you throw the ball 42 times and you don't have a touchdown or interception, something's gone wrong. You better start chunking that daggum thing and make something happen, because good God almighty.
Wasn't Wrangle that Johnny Depp movie where he played an animated lizard?
Rango.
Oh, okay. Close.
Yeah, I missed that one. But it's on my list. Texas Tech 51, Oklahoma 48. This was extremely funny. And if you want to talk about people on Twitter that deserve a bit of comeuppance, Oklahoma, welcome to the club.
I tweeted this during the Texas game. It held up every single week. You have to double tap against Texas Tech. If you let them hang around, they will hang around. The one thing that I will point out about this game, I thought it was a very bad thing that Oklahoma ran multiple plays that involved Dylan Gabriel catching a pass downfield and then taking just an enormous hit. Not only is he your quarterback, but also he's a mercenary who transferred in and has 1 year. And are you just going to, 1, sacrifice that kid's body because you don't care because he's not going to be here next year? 2, someone with Dylan Gabriel's history. Yeah, that just seems very unwise, and it felt a little bit desperate from Oklahoma.
Gabriel, by the way, I should give a shout out, had what I would call a Mayfieldian game, perhaps Mahomesian college game, 28 of 40, 449 yards, and 6 touchdowns against Texas Tech, and his team lost.
And they lost because Oklahoma's defense refuses to tackle.
Someone needs to talk to those boys and tell them to tackle. Kansas State 47, Kansas 27, Sunflower Showdown. Kansas State seals their spot in the Big 12 championship game against TCU. The Kansas thing was fun. We've talked about this. They're no longer fun. Kansas State's good.
I think they're totally fun. Still, I think that they have one of the most interesting and annoying offenses in terms of they are good for 6 plays a game where it's like, how the hell did that guy get there? And this was, 21 to 30 at the half, and depth really got the issue. I think you can make an argument that this is a 20-point game and Kansas gave Kansas State 14 points. So we're talking about, future looking and true quality. I'd say, look, man, Kansas isn't entirely in the toilet. Don't let that record down the stretch really confuse you. They did a great job for where they are as a program, and they are on the right track, and they just locked their boy up for a while. So
very true. Okay, Parker, we're going to start with the game, Michigan, Ohio State. And after that, let's do 2-sentence reviews of each of these games going forward. But I want to talk about Michigan, Ohio State, because watched all of this. Michigan put an absolute beatdown on Ohio State without Blake Corum at running back, I should add. Some of the play calling, some of the decisions that Ryan Day made and the Ohio State offensive staff, not getting the ball to their best players, Marvin Harrison Jr. Being one of them, were just astounding. And Michigan took advantage of it, and took advantage of an Ohio State defense that was pretty strong. And then Michigan had, I think, 2 runs of over 70 yards in this game. So, yeesh.
It's hard to fix a defense in 1 year. Ohio State definitely had some health issues, but this was they just lined up and played a very close game where Michigan was able to separate themselves in the second half due to just some extreme physicality. And then things kind of fell away from them and got out of hand again. I think that a lot of people are going to talk about how Ohio State, their one loss was to who's going to be number 2, Michigan. And I think if you start to look at their body of work and who they've played, given this Michigan loss, you start to say, man, this team did not really do much this season.
I completely agree. and this is putting the cart before the horse, and God strike me down here, but I would rather TCU play Michigan in a potential semifinal. Still think that. So, but we will get to that if it happens. Okay. Egg Bowl.
Two sentences. Here we go. Okay.
Egg Bowl, 24, Mississippi State 24, Ole Miss 22. Lane Kiffin is staying in Oxford, and this game is probably a reason why.
I liked the shovel pass at the end of the game. I did not like calling 2 timeouts to come up with this.
Tulane 27, Cincinnati 24. Tulane is probably going to be the G5 bid to the New Year's Six Bowl, and I think that rocks. And hopefully Willie Fritz is still there.
Got to beat UCF, but hey, man, Michael Pratt, legitimately a dude. I liked him 2 years ago. He lost me a little bit last season, but this year has really, really gone into his own. Tyjae Spears, NFL guy from Ponchatoula, the running back for Tulane, 180 yards in that game. Very impressive. That was way more than 2 sentences.
Ponchatoula. North Carolina State 30, North Carolina 27 in double overtime. I did not watch a minute of this game. Carolina also lost to Iowa State that night in basketball. I have nothing more to say.
I was right about North Carolina, just not about their win total. Gene Chizik. Sorry, I have a second sentence there. Gene Chizik is North Carolina's defensive coordinator.
He sure is. Not for long, I would hope. South Carolina 31, Clemson 30. Dude, good for South Carolina. I think this rules, and Clemson was a fraud the entire season, so I'm totally fine with this.
Do you think Spencer Rattler got drug tested like 6 weeks ago and then started taking PEDs and just became really good after that? And that's what's happening here?
I guess I can't rule that out.
Can I just read you his yards per game?
Please.
227, 377 against Arkansas, but it was against Arkansas. 118, 187, 212, 177, 168, 171, 200, 145, 438, 360 against Tennessee and Clemson, 2 top 10 teams back to back. The Tennessee one is less impressive because Tennessee's defense is made of paper. The Clemson one is very impressive because while Clemson's offense is terrible, their defense is legit. So that is extremely impressive from Spencer Rattler. Good for him, man.
Big time players make big time plays. Kentucky 26, Louisville 13. I was not aware that Louisville was ranked heading into this game. Sure. That seemed like, why not? Louisville this season, one, they just can't win this game. They just never win this game. But this season, they started out real bad. I mean, losses to Syracuse, losses to Boston College. Satterfield was on the hot seat.
And they win 4 against varying degrees of competition. And then, we're outclassed against Kentucky here.
Oregon State 38, Oregon 34. This seemed like a hell of a game. And good for the Beavers and Jonathan Smith.
Oregon State's very fun, and I haven't heard anything about Jonathan Smith potentially leaving, which is cool.
Yeah, very cool. Apologies to my listeners if you can hear Max Doggan barking in the background. Texas A&M 38, LSU 23. I was on the phone with my A&M friend, wound up talking smack to her dad for 5 minutes on the phone, and then A&M went and won this game, but they're still not making a bowl, so I do not care.
Jimbo Fisher, no notes. Great performance.
USC 38, Notre Dame 27. SC is likely your 4th playoff team, assuming everyone wins out. Caleb Williams is also probably your likely Heisman Trophy winner. So,
dude, they're legitimately good. And they just keep getting turned. I mean, at what point can you say, like, dude, they can't sustain this turnover luck? Yeah, the hell they can, because they've done it every game. They were up 2 turnovers here. Notre Dame did not play well. They've rebounded really, really nicely. Michael Mayer, absolute dude. Notre Dame tight end. Yes. Just really, really great. One of the most involved receivers in the nation. They rely on him, and he's very good.
Notre Dame's had a couple of tight ends where I'm like, oh, I really remember their names. Wasn't there a guy that played like baseball and then became a Notre Dame tight end? Or maybe I'm getting that flipped around. But
I'm literally going to Google Notre Dame
baseball tight end. See what you can get.
Jeff Samardzija.
That's him. Yeah, man.
The Shark. He played college baseball and football for Notre Dame. He was a 2-time All-American wide receiver, but He is. How much does he weigh? He's very big.
He's a large fella.
He's a big.
I always had him as a tight end. Anyway, Parker. This concludes the Pro Theory Podcast. TCU's 12-0. My name is Grant McGalliard. You can find me on Twitter at Grant McGalliard, spelled like it sounds with all those vowels. He is Parker Fleming. He is at Stats of War on Twitter. He is doing a ton of really good work, and you can watch him on the Bet US show Tuesday and Wednesday at noon Central. Is that right?
Yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday, News Central. We're going to be cranking out all these through bowl season, so we're not going anywhere.
I can't. It's only taken me 12 weeks to remember when that daggum show is. Hope you all had a very happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for listening. We are sponsored and presented by Frogs Today. Go check them out on frogstoday.com. Check back in on Wednesday. We record Thursday morning. We released for the preview of the Big 12 championship game, which maybe you missed. TCU is actually playing in against Kansas State. Parker, go Frogs.
TCU is 12-0, Grant. Go Frogs.